Welcome back to Adventure Repeats. Glad to see you here. So, if this is your first time here, make sure you like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, and be sure to subscribe. We got a lot of great content on the channel and a lot of great content coming, so be sure to check it out. So, what are we doing today? We are actually adding the factory upfitter switches into this 2024 Chevrolet 2500HD LTZ with a 6.6 liter gas engine. Because when we bought this truck, we just bought it on the dealership lot, it didn't actually have upfitter switches in it already, and that was an option that I really wanted, to be able to add in accessories and things like that, especially for plowing, to have the auxiliary lights. So we're going to show you how to do it right here, right now, so be sure to stay tuned. So now, what all is required to make this happen? So here is the GM kit number for the harness and fuse block, things like that. The other thing that they don't list is, depending on model, you have your dash, your interior dash panel that needs to be replaced for the upfitter switch panel to plug into. So depending on make, model, and truck, depending on color interior, this will actually vary. So that's something you actually have to talk to your dealership about specifically. Otherwise, harness, that's your actual main battery harness right there. It does come with a fuse kit. You have your main under dash fuse block kit, because when the upfitter switches work, you press a button, it sends an activation signal to this fuse block kit itself, and a jumper wire off this harness. It's actually down here. That jumper wire is what actually sends signal to any of your auxiliary power, so it's actually a fuse system. The switch is tied in, so it actually makes it very nice and easy. And then obviously you need the new dash panel to fit, because it varies in depending location. And then this is the switch panel itself. So this is everything we need to make it happen. And we're going to start on the inside to get the interior panel on and fuse block and harness mounted. So we have the up-level dash and bucket seats. So that is the challenging interior to actually work with, especially because it has the push button start, which they all do in this LTZ model. So what it is we need to replace the trim panel. So some trucks, it's going to be over here. Sometimes it's up here in this panel. Sometimes they're over here on the bottom side, depending on that. And then this truck, it's actually going to be right there. So this is that middle panel itself. So that is where we got to replace it. So we got to get to that. To get to that, we got to start with this panel right here. This one comes off. The separation line is right there that you can see. And then this panel is the rest of it, and that's where that comes out there. So we need to get all these panels off to get there. So we're going to start by this one. This one just pulls out. They're snapped in. And then this one has one screw on the back side. And then we'll snap that one out and go from there. So got to start getting panels off to get to where everything needs to be mounted. Now we have that screw off right there that was in that hole. It's worth mentioning, we got to take this trim panel off. This is the panel that goes right here. So what you do is you pop it out from the back side and then pull it out, because that little tab right there goes into that middle dash. So once you get these on both sides, that dash will just pull and pop right out. So here is the old panel, just the half of it. Here's the other one that actually goes on the side here. It's actually meant to be removed because there is fuses underneath it. And actually a wire diagram and spare fuses right here. So that's all that's on that. That's how it goes. That is the dash. Here is the new piece. Compared side by side. One just has a hole in it. That's it. That's the difference. Had to do all that work just to get this in here. But before we put it all back together, we're going to install the fuse block and get harnesses ran, so that way we don't have to do that hidden behind all the panels. So that's the next step. So with the fuse block itself, this right here is the main master power connector. So your main power wire is going to go into that, which we have to run itself. We have a connector right here. This white connector, or grayish connector, it ties into the factory harness and the factory system. Because if you have plow prep, you have a pre-run power wire that runs up to behind the third brake light for roof mounted lights. Then also auxiliary wires that you can splice into for running auxiliary lights and things like that. And then this pigtail harness right here, that is what connects into the switch panel itself underneath the dash. It is mounted by 2 screws. So we'll mount it and start running wires. Wanted to mention with this block right here, take the cover off, it just snaps off, because you can access your fuses and relays underneath it, because they all have fuses and relays to make it a nice block system. But these two 5-amp fuses right here, you see how they got like 3 slots to them. So what they're meant to be is you can actually choose how this is powered. So as it's factory wired with the fuse in the left hand position, it is on battery power. So these can be turned on and off whenever you want. If you want to choose them to be ignition controlled, you take that fuse and move it over. That way you don't have to worry about running the battery dead when the truck is off. So you can actually select if this is ignition control or just fully powered all the time. I'm going to leave it fully powered all the time because that's how I prefer to have my switches, and I can manage my power from there. That block right there, that is our auxiliary fuse block right there. And before I forget, your screw holes are right here. So it actually screws in from the front right there itself. So that's all it takes right there, and that's what mounts it. So, ran into a snag, and everything I was told from the dealership apparently isn't that accurate. GM really kind of messed up with this one, and it's frustrating because to sort out all the parts and go back and forth, especially to find that dash panel, has been a big pain because all documentation, there's no support for it at all. It's terrible. So that's why I'm making these videos to show how to do it, because this is frustrating. So what I'm finding is this fuse block, the one that we initially mounted and ran the lead up into the dash. Yeah, that one. Doing it that way, this gray connector that needs to tie into the factory harness won't reach. And that's frustrating. That's a problem. So what do you do to alleviate that? Go back to the dealership, start talking to them about, hey, what do we do about this? How do we solve this problem? Like, what issue am I running into? So this block is actually meant to be upside down like this, so the fuses can be accessed from the bottom without having to pull a panel off. Okay, I can understand that. So this gray connector that ties into the harness will be right there, and the power cable goes directly out through the firewall where it's meant to be. And all your little wires right here for your upfitters, that's all in the right position. So it's meant to be mounted in this direction, and that way your foot doesn't kick the wire harness as well. So that means this harness ain't gonna reach. So my options are peel the tape loom back and see if it'll reach then. But my gut's telling me it's not, because it barely reached being in the correct orientation. Now, hey, let's invert it and have it facing the wrong way and say that's going to reach. So, not too happy about that. And I had to triple check part numbers. They say every upfitter switch kit takes this fuse block. This is the part number that goes with that. But, and one small caveat, in the TSB itself, it actually listed the numbers and models wrong, but it says some harnesses aren't going to be available until 2025 for consumer purchase. So that means my dash with the uplevel dash is really only part of the ZR2 package to get the upfitter switches, because that's the only ones I've ever seen it on. So that's how I know it exists. So being on the ZR2 package, that means they're kind of withholding everything, keeping them for themselves. And that's why those chassis are so hard to get right now, because some specialty parts like this thing are a pain to come by. So my options are wait another year to buy a factory one, cut and extend the gray harness connector, or cut and extend the upfitter switch connector. Those are my options right now. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do by a list of priorities. So this box has to be mounted a certain direction to be up high enough and give you access to the fuse. So we are going to mount it this direction. So we're going to invert it from what it was before, because this connector, your main power needs to be on the right direction. This connector needs to be accessible and where it's at. So if I do it the other way and extending that, it's not going to help. And these still need to be where they're accessible on the left side, left footwell, to be accessed and go into through the firewall. So that's on level of priority. So this matters. That kind of dictates it. So we're going to go that route. So we're going to have to extend this, because not everything goes as it should from the factory. We learned this from the second battery install, that it wasn't right, and no matter what you did, no matter documentation, how much legwork you did, sometimes it's just not going to be. So we're going to actually leave this tubing that they wrapped with some quiet tape and things like that, so that way when it's running through the dash it doesn't rattle at all. So we're actually going to peel back the tape down here and then cut and extend it down here. Probably just going to go a foot on every wire just to be on the safe side and have some extra space, and that's where we're going to go from there. So since we're going to extend this harness, we're going to show you how it's done. Frustrating that we have to do it for this dash, but other dashes, they won't have this problem. So you can skip this part of the process if you don't have the center console bucket seats. So what we did here is we're actually shortening this tubing. It's just convoluted tubing wrapped with quiet tape. So we extended that to give a little bit more space right here. We could take and pull this harness back and pull the tape off that, but this is all bunched together really nicely. So I'd rather not disturb the rest of it if I can. I want to keep this on there because that's sound deadening through the dash. So I just cut it back to give us a little bit more room to work. So we're going to cut the tape off right through this section. Once we get off, we're going to go one wire at a time. We're going to split it and extend it on both sides. So the reason I'm doing one wire at a time is I can simply just cut it, peel everything back, and just match the colors back up. But you can see on this that there are a lot of just the same color wires. And that we do not want to mix up because that will cause bad problems and we got to buy a new harness. So we're going to go one by one. That reduces the chance of mixing wires up, and that guarantees if we're doing one at a time that it will be done properly. So I'm just using a random wire that I got laying around. I believe it's 16 gauge, it's more than enough. So this is how it looks. Peel the harness back, and now I'm just going one wire at a time, cutting it, putting the extension in. And I'm using heat shrink splices, that way when they shrink up, they also kind of glue and adhere to the actual wire itself to keep things from pulling apart, to help seal it and help create a stronger connection. So we're just going to do that one by one, going through the process to extend the whole harness. Takes a while, but that's what we're going to do to make it work. Here we go, fully extended. Kind of looks like it, but we're going to have a ball of butt splices on each end. I'll just tape it up, do the best we can to make it look nice because they didn't do it right, because their documentation sucks. And found some blue convoluted tubing, probably just going to wrap the wires with, just so it looks a little bit nicer underneath the dash. So let me know, is blue tubing a good idea, or should I have gone with black? Because I had blue laying around. Let me know. Other than that, wrap it up, make it look nice, and then we're going to reinstall it. So now with this properly installed, our connector comes out right there. So 1 foot was all it took. I wouldn't go any less. But underneath here, you can see, you got this gray connector. It's actually taped up off the side right there. It's got a dummy plug. You pull out of it, just like that. And that is where the gray connector will connect right back in there. Connect it in, lock it down, and then we can start running power wires. Now, before I got too far ahead running power wires underneath the hood and getting too dirty, went back to the interior and reinstalled this new panel. Made sure the connector was coming out the hole. Reinstalled these side plates back in there so it looks like it should. Made sure everything fit, put that screw back in. So now we've just got the Upfitters switches right there. Get the multi-pin connector just like that, every GM connector that they have. We're going to connect that in, and that just snaps into place, and that's where it'll be for the factory Upfitter switches. So once we do that, then we are on to running power to it. So this kit right here, if you had plow prep, this comes with it. Otherwise, if you're just adding Upfitter switches, you need this kit to do it. This has extra fuse blocks and power studs and things like that. That's used to tie into the factory battery fuse block on the passenger side. So I have an extra one of these kits because it came with my Upfitter switch kit, and I also had a plow prep, and that was installed with that. And I covered that extensively in my adding a second battery video, so be sure to check that out, see how it's done. It's very simple and easy, but just as a note, that is needed as part of this process. This is the harness right here. This is what's going to touch the battery block, and this runs underneath the hood, and right about here it turns into underneath the dash, where this is where it connects into that plug, and they give you this connector to go with it. So you basically make your own connector for this to work with it, and that's all that's left. So with the harness, how do you route it? So I just got it laid out here just quickly. So on this end, this cable will go and hook right up into there. So now they give you these little Christmas tree holders. So that clip there and that clip there, you pop those out and those will go in there. You've got across the middle where you've got more that don't have a hole. They give you the clips. They just want you to drill a couple holes right there. Just to add it in. You're not tapping into that one because now it goes down and around and calls for going in right there. So at the very bottom of that, where you got that little drain tube kind of thing, that actually has a grommet hole. That's the service access port to going in through the firewall. So you take your utility knife, kind of notch it, or the best you can, maybe you got to use a drill bit to punch through that rubber. Make sure it's cleared on the inside as well, so that way you can feed the wire in through there. And that's how we get the wire harness into the inside. So you can mount it first and then feed the wires, but don't hook it up right away because then you'll have a live wire that you're working while you're doing the process. So we're going to go through it and get it done. So they supply 4 Christmas tree clips, but you can see that they are actually a different style than the ones that came out. They have different head style and different shaft style. So we're going to swap these 2 out that they had for the 4 that they swapped in, and we'll get it reattached. So I did originally have this set the way the factory did it, but it looked kind of weird because you had to drill those, so you drilled them off the side, and honestly it just looked goofy. So I pulled it back off, and since I was drilling holes down there, I just drilled another set of holes right next to that. So instead of the harness kind of being up and weird and cockeyed and crooked, compared to the rest of which will be down, I just drilled another hole set so it'll actually sit down and clean, so it actually look like it's meant to be there all the way down the line. So that's what I did, and I think it'll end up looking cleaner in the end. So that's where it comes out, right up there. That is right next to the gas pedal, kind of way up top in there. And to get it through, I used a zip tie and some tape to help me get a lead to go through it. Yeah, to get through that firewall spot. Now we can make the connections. Now that we've got our power connector from our fuse box right here, and this is our wire that came from the battery, we just have to install it on the connector itself. Since it is only one-sided, since you can see that's the connector right there, so make sure when you put it together that you have the power wire going to the right side, otherwise you will not get power. So the wire just simply inserts on the back side of this connector. Once you insert it all the way, it will lock into place, and then it will connect in there. So you're making your own connector for this. Other than that, we connect that and we'll connect the battery and test it out. So once you push that wire in there on the correct side, it's keyed, so it only goes in one way. So if it's not going in, flip it 180 degrees and then it should go in there until it snaps. So you got a little bit of pull on there, and see this little tab right there? You're going to take a pair of pliers and smash it down to lock it. So this is all locked together then, and won't just fall apart on you. And then we can connect it up to go. And then we will, after that, just make sure all the wires are secured out of the way to make sure they're not in the front of the brake pedal, the gas pedal, and things like that. We're just going to tie up everything nice underneath the dash here, because all that's left is connecting the battery. So back underneath the hood here, that's where you can see the wires came out. I wrapped on the back side of that bracket and then came across. As you can see how it looks nice and even and smooth as it comes down. And with the battery cover off, this 60 amp fuse right here, that's where we're going to tie into with this harness. So this assembly, this set, gets put in here with part of the Upfitter switch kit or the plow prep package kit. So that's all done right there. We did it all on the second battery installation because you can see one right there. This didn't originally have one, so now you can see if you want to add a second one. So that's all there is to it. We're going to connect power and then test to make sure everything's working. So as you can see, Upfitter switches are now installed. And right down there to test them, simply turn it on. You can see the orange light comes on. The orange light comes on, that means everything's working as it should. All the dash panels are put back into place. So everything is good there. All the wires are secured and tied up. So that's all there is to it. Upfitter switches have been installed. So that was the installation of the Upfitter switches on this 2024 Chevrolet 2500HD LTZ with the up-level dash and the center console. So we ran into a few hiccups along the way, just like during the second battery process. We found out things just cannot be done just exactly like the factory. So this is about as close as we're going to get, because I'm not going to wait till 2025 to order a new module to make it work. So frustrating as it is, it's done, it's working as it should, and so now you know how to do it yourself if you want to buy a truck that's on the lot that doesn't have the Upfitter switches already. So if you like the video, make sure to like it, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what else you want to hear about, tell us if you thought this was a good install, and let us know if you thought the blue convoluted tubing was actually a good idea or not, because I don't know, something a little different, had it laying around, because this is kind of done on the fly. And subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content already on the channel, so be sure to check it out. And remember to have a great adventure.